Welcome to episode 171 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we tell the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. The most famous of all musicians, except the one who played in the shining halls of Olympus, was Orpheus, the son of Apollo, and the muse Calliope. When he was a mere child, his father gave him a lyre and taught him to play upon it. But Orpheus needed very little instruction, for as soon as he laid his hands upon the strings, all the world stopped to listen. Wild beasts drew near him, so entranced they put aside their fierceness. Trees gathered around to hear his beautiful notes. Rivers stopped flowing along the banks so that they could hear Orpheus, whose music was more harmonious than theirs. The very rocks softened when he touched his lyres. Orpheus drew the most wonderful music from his instrument. With his gift, he could embolden people to do deeds they didn't dream they had in them. When he sailed on the Argo with Jason to search for the Golden Fleece, it was his lyre that heartened the men on those nights when they lost courage and despaired of reaching their goals. It was his lyre that soothed and calmed them when the quarrels threatened to sow disharmony. It was his lyre, singing louder than the sultry song of the sirens, that saved the Argonauts, who might have left their bones on that dangerous island as so many other sailors had. But music was not enough. Something was missing in Orpheus's life. He knew what it was when he met the wood nymph Eurydice, and for the first time felt the joy of love. She returned his feelings and happily agreed to become his wife. On the wedding day, there was the usual mirth and feasting, but one event occurred that cast a gloom over the happiness of the newly married pair. When Hymen, god of marriage, came with his torch to bless the nuptial feast, the light that should have burned clear and pure began to smoke ominously, as if predicting future disaster. This evil omen was fulfilled all too soon. For one day, when Eurydice was walking in the meadow, as she often did, she met the youth Aristæus, who was so charmed with her beauty that he insisted upon staying beside her to pour his ardent speeches into her unwilling ears. To escape from these troublesome attentions, Eurydice started to run away, and as she ran, she stepped on a poisonous snake, which quickly turned and bit her. She had barely time to reach her home before the poison had done its work, and Orpheus heard the sad story from her dying lips. As soon as Hermes led away the soul of Eurydice, the bereaved husband hastened to the shining halls of Olympus, and throwing himself down before Zeus's golden throne, he implored that great ruler of gods and men to give back his wife. There was always pity in the hearts of the gods for those who die in flowering time. So Zeus gave permission to Orpheus to go down into Hades and beg of Hades the boon he craved. It was a steep and perilous journey to the kingdom of the dead, and the road was one that no mortal foot had ever trod. But through his love for Eurydice, Orpheus forgot the dangers of the ways, and when he spoke her name, the terrors of the darkness vanished. In his hand he held his lyre, and when he arrived at the gate of Hades, where the fierce three-headed dog Cerberus refused to let him pass, Orpheus stood still in the uncertain darkness and began to play. And as he played, the snarling of the dog ceased, and the noise of its harsh breathing grew faint. Then Orpheus went on his way undisturbed, but still he played softly on his lyre, and the sounds floated far into the dismal interior of Hades, where the souls of the condemned labored forever at their task. Tantalus heard the music and ceased to strive for a drop of that forbidden water. Zion rested a moment beside his ever-revolving wheel, and Sisyphus stood listening, while the rock which he must roll through all eternity fell from his wearied arms. The daughters of Danas laid down their urns beside the sieve into which they were forever pouring water. And as the mournful wailing of Orpheus's lyre told the story of his lost love, they wept then for a sorrow not their own. So plaintive indeed was the music that all the shadowy forms that flitted endlessly by shed tears of sympathy for the player's grief, and even the cheeks of the Furies went wet. On and on Orpheus walked, surrounded by the dead, and then he saw a palace loom out of the shadows. As he approached it, the dead fell back. He found that he was walking alone. He was approaching the dwelling place of their king. He made his way between the black gates. He climbed steps of black stone. A doorway of black ebony swung open before him. He entered the hall. At the far end of it there were 2 thrones. On one sat the king of terrors, Hades himself, his eyes as deep as open graves. His black beard spread across his belly. Besides Hades sat his wife, beautiful Persephone. She was like a moon shining in a dark sky, like a mistletoe berry in the depths of winter. Orpheus, still playing his lyre, walked up to the 2 thrones. He stood before the god and goddess. He looked into their faces, and then he began to sing. We mortals are wretched things, and the gods who know no care have woven sorrow into the pattern of our lives. Even the sparrow on the branch, even the wren in the willow, knows more of sorrow than the thundering gods, who have never felt the cold hand of death closing around their hearts. But you mighty gods, you have known the sweet pains of love. You have felt Aphrodite's shining shafts. Great Hades, imagine those summer months when Persephone is gone, lasting forever. Imagine, if you can, her pale face crumbling into dust. That is how it is for mortal man. Great Hades, I beg you, give me back my Eurydice. There was a silence. There was not a dry eye in all of the underworld. Persephone turned to Hades, her face streaming with silver tears, and Hades turned to his wife. One oily black tear trickled down his cheek and splashed onto his beard. And here is where my tale ends for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.